I mean, it feels like the conversations thus far has reinforced the message that I'm going to discuss here, right? How do we make AI real, right? We are at a stage where we are beyond experiments. Okay, does it work? It's not switching. Excuse me. Yeah, it's not switching. Okay. It worked, yes. Okay, let's go back and try it again. Okay, here we are. Perfect. So we all know, right, the evolution of AI started with demos and experiments, right? And it was important to test our hypotheses, test the art of the possible, to see what AI can and cannot do for us, right? In fact, even at Workday last year, we had this initiative of building a mechanism to sandbox AI hypotheses. But we have to go beyond that now, right? And that's the whole idea of operationalizing and productionizing AI. And that is the shift in the mandate, and it changes the mandate, what we can do and what we should do now. The focus shouldn't be more around like the art of the possible. The focus is how do we make it real and what it entails to make it real, right? To operationally make things ready. There are a few components around it, right? The components are like, when we think about operationalizing AI, it is not the model. It is not the inference that will be successful here. It is the data. It is the underlying infrastructure. We spoke about the concept of harness. We spoke about the concept of AI ops. And making it real is quintessential, right? Few components there as policy orchestration, metadata, operational trust. Very, very important. So in a nutshell, right, what got us here will not get us there, right? Like we got successful across the board in experimenting with AI. We got successful in building sandboxes, but that mindset, that methodology, that operational rigor has to be redefined. And we have to think what it means to take something from 1 to 10. Like creating a 0 to 1 with AI is relatively easy. We all know that, it's a fact, but taking it from 1 to 10, we don't have a textbook answer yet. And of course, like what we saw today through various demos and discussions, the discussion was around 1 to 10, right? What we can do to take it to 1 to 10. And collectively, we will have to try many, many capabilities, many, many different instruments to figure out what works for us and what doesn't. So there is a bit of a hit and trial here, but it's absolutely a practice that we must embark on today. So really, like, why it is important, right? Like, in a nutshell, right, if we have to think about 1 to 10, there are certain considerations that we need to bring into to the table, right? One, obviously, like AI systems are not deterministic, they're probabilistic systems. So way we think about testing has to be redefined. The idea is, if you look at traditional software development, right, like 80% build, 20% test. We need to flip that equation. Right now it's 80% test, 20% build. Like tools like Cursor, tools like Lovable, vibe coding in general, you can build something very quickly, right? Like, I mean, a personal example, I was working with my 9-year-old son. We built a game on Scratch using vibe coding. But nowhere the game is close to be published in an app store, right? But the concept was there, and we were able to put together something in a matter of hours. But now making it real is a whole different ball game. And it becomes even more complex for large enterprises. And that's the mindset shift that we got to embark onto. And then there are considerations around security. There are considerations around data privacy, right? Like there are considerations around token consumption, cost, right? Like value driven from AI should be at least greater than equal to the cost or that we are incurring through tokens and even human labor associated with building these applications. So taking an operational mindset is quite important, and that operational mindset comes with context engineering, understanding the semantics, and making it real for large enterprises. Well, now, from an infrastructure and observability perspective, right, there are 4 pillars here, right? The way I look at it, like these are the 4 gauge clusters, right? If you want to drive a race car, you need a lot of gauge clusters. It's not just your speedometer and fuel meter and tachometer anymore, right? You need many, many clusters. I'm a fan of Formula One, if you see how many parameters a driver and the team monitors at any given time. So if you want to drive the AI Formula One, these are largely the 4 pillars, right? And obviously, devil is in the details, right? You can double-click, triple-click on all of them, but at a high level, lineage and trust, so a component of observability, where the data is coming from, how the models are making decisions, how inference is done, auditability, lineage, and traceability around it. It's very important, right? Nothing new. Behavioral monitoring, right? Like, is the agent doing what it is supposed to do? And it is continuously doing what it was supposed to do, right? Like just not monitoring it on day 1, but day 2, day 3, up to day n, continuous monitoring, and having agents monitoring other agents, right? So like AI as a judge, agent as a judge, right? So bringing that concept to the table, quite important, right? So that area, particularly the second quadrant, right? It's still an area that is evolving. It is uncharted, but an important area. Then there is obviously like retrieval quality, right? Like this is fairly at a high level, right? There is a degree of maturity across the industry on this, right? Like when we build RAG models, right? How retrieval is done, the quality of the data is associated with it. Are the answers correct? Grounding those answers to the ground truth and the reality. That we have done, like across the industry, there are many researchers, many textbook answers around it. And then last but not the least is decision validation, and that's where the human in the loop comes into play, right? Like it's quite critical, right? We think about AI making decisions for us, but we have to deliberately think about how we can interject in between and how we can build hybrid workflows and hybrid systems where humans are equally empowered. And I'm going to stress on the word empowered because it's an empowering mindset, right? To check the AI and validate their decisions. With that, right, there are few other considerations on the how. So the 4 quadrants are there, but how do we make these 4 quadrants real, right? You can think about it from perspective of like universal metadata layer, right? Like, do we have a layer that is universally spread across the enterprises, where that provides that metadata, provides that context. So when decisions are being made, when AI is making a decision on your behalf, or AI is taking an action, it always knows the context, that the why behind those outcomes, right? So quite critical. Easier said than done, right? Like unifying metadata is one component of the story, but really making the metadata real needs a lot of context engineering, needs a lot of tribal knowledge, which differs by organizations, by departments, that has to be incorporated into that layer. So work is needed there. Then there is a component of like federated governance, right? Like governance is not about control, but governance is about enablement, and it has to be federated. We can't just bring all the AI and agents into one monolithic system, right? It has to be a bit heterogeneous in nature. But how do you bring governance to a heterogeneous system, right? And which is multiple systems talking to each other, multiple data layers talking to each other. That's the second component. Like how do we enable federated governance? And previous content today talked about it a little bit, right? Like how do we make governance federated? Workload portability, right? Like of course, like we can't have our workloads encapsulated in one area only, but it has to scale across the board, and that's where the portability concept comes into play. So quite critical and important there. And last but not the least, semantic consistency. With that in mind, right, so I spoke about it, human in the loop, right? It's quite important that like when we think about scaling AI, like we start with defining the intent, right? Answering the why, right? Why we want to do it, right? Do we want to build an agentic system, an AI system, because it's a cool thing to do, or is it going to solve a critical problem for us? So that intent is important. Then execution. Execution is not about just building the agent and having the agent ready to do some work, but execution is about how do you do it with right governance controls, security in mind, by scalability in mind, right? Some of the agents that my team has deployed over the last year or so, we have close to 4,000 users actively talking to those agentic systems. Obviously, they are not concurrent user at any given time. Maybe 300-400 users are concurrently talking to it. So we have to think about the execution strategy, right? It's not about just we built an agent and it works, but we have to think about how it will scale, how we will secure, right? Raghu spoke about security associated with agents, very, very important. And last but not the least, like how do we incorporate a human loop there to validate? Right? It's quite critical, and it's not validation done one time. It's validation done over iterations of many, 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 many cycles. So it's a cyclical, iterative exercise that's not once and done, but it should be part of your workflow as you think about scaling agentic ecosystems. Well, that's about it, right? So there are, it's quite critical that we think about agentic ecosystems and AI from a perspective of operational maturity and not from a perspective of build only. Build only was important. It was important 12 months ago. It was important 24 months ago because we had to test many things. But we are beyond testing now. We need to make it real. We need to make it scalable. And to make it scalable, there are 3 components that has to converge, right? Observability around AI. What AI is doing, how it is taking actions, what are its outcomes, what metrics, that's very important. Then agentic governance, right? Like governing AI through ecosystems like MCP, agent-to-agent communications, right? It's quite critical. In fact, like MCP solves an industry problem that many of us may be already aware of, right? When we incorporate agents and they talk to each other, the communication is often point to point, right? Which is a multiplicative problem. If there are M agents talking to N agents, it's M times N. But tech tools like MCP servers, MCP registries can help us to transform that problem from an N times N problem to an M plus N problem. So for large enterprises or complex enterprises, obviously when you're adding something, you can control it a lot more than you're multiplying something. So basic mathematics, but very important where we consider that. And then I spoke about the metadata convergence, right? Like the metadata has to be interoperable because that gives context to the agents. Well, having said that, right, it's not about organizations will win because they have the greatest model, they have the greatest inferences. To a large extent, right, modeling and inference is a commodity, right? Whether open source or you buy from a inference provider, right, that you can buy that commodity. But the differentiations come from the factor that who can operationalize it, right? It's not about, if you want to build a car, it's not about like buying an engine, buying a gearbox, transmission system, and a body, but you have to think about the mechanics of the car and how make the car drivable, make the car sellable, make it attractive enough and have a market positioning, right? In a similar way, right? It's not about having the tools to build the AI together and stitch them together and Frankenstein a solution, but it's almost we have to think about who will use it, how we will use it, and how we will make it sustainable and scalable over the long haul. And that's about it, about why operations are so important. So with that, I'll rest my discussion, open the floor for any questions you may have. Sure.
So at Workday, obviously very advanced in the use of AI, you are sort of owning both data engineering and data science platforms at Workday. How do you think about sort of your AI governance, if you will, right? It's a new thing. You discussed that it's quite important. How are you thinking about that in terms of the sort of people you need to put in place, the groups that you have to bring together?
Interesting one. So, Ramon, if I understand your question correctly, like your question is directed what kind of like the skills and skill sets that we bring to the table. It's a tough question and a hard one to answer, but I'll take an attempt at it because it's changing rapidly, right? And finding unicorns are quite difficult. The way we are thinking about it, like there are 4 capabilities that we want to bring together. And it will be almost hard to find individuals with all those four capabilities, but bring teams together with the 4 capabilities. The first one, someone with good understanding of software engineering principles, right? And testing principles. Again, going back to my note on flipping the 80-20, right? 80% test and 20% dev. So someone who understands software engineering and testing, that's number 1. Number 2, who understand infrastructures and networking and security and operations, because deploying AI is not about just the inferencing component, but understanding how an AI will transverse through complex network and the infrastructure, whether it is working with hyperscalers, whether it is understanding how CPUs, GPUs, they operate, and also understanding like various security protocols like SSOs, right? Then the third component, quintessential, is someone who also understands the foundations of how AI inferencing works, how AI models work. I don't expect them to be like PhD data scientists or computer scientists, but at least they should have fairly basic understanding the mathematics behind a neural network, right? Like how an AI is coming to conclusion, because that will help them to understand and respect what it needs to, what practice needs to come into place for deploying and scaling AI, right? And last but not the least, and who can also think as a product manager and economist at the same time, right? So they own the problem statement, they own the roadmap, and they also understand that they not only own the problem statement, they own the economics behind the problem statement, right? The value to the cost curve. While it's impossible to find one resource with all four of them, but what we are doing more and more is finding a combination of resources who have at least two of the four things together, and bring them together to form the pods, and we are just getting started with that mindset. Relatively speaking, we are not there yet where I would say that this model is fully successful, but that's how we are embarking into that journey. Go ahead.
We look at Workday as an enterprise app sitting in a large there is other there are other enterprise apps, custom apps. Everyone is actually going on to the AI journey. I'm just trying to visualize what's your view of how to converge, because I'm taking some cues from what Rohit talked about, convergence, autonomous but convergent, right? From an enterprise, any large enterprise clients are concerned. How are you thinking about coexisting in this landscape, complex, convoluted landscape, and what's the way forward, just from your eyes?
Yeah, for sure. And again, like there is no right or wrong answer. It's all gray now, right? But we will find in few years whose perspective was close to the reality. If I understand your question correctly, right, you're absolutely right. Like there is a vast array of organizations who are all getting into AI, and rightfully so. And how would they interoperate? Like, are they all trying to solve the same problem? So the way I look at it is like every enterprise needs to solve a problem for their domain, right? Let's say data observability is a domain, like human capital management is a domain, CRM is a domain, and so on and so forth, right? And each of them has also subdomains. But these domains cannot operate independently, right? It's like the way I look at it, like if I were to really create an e-commerce site, I can't have the best payment system and not have a customer service department, right? Or a product review unit and whatever and whatnot, right? So that's not going to work, right? So we need to have these domains talking to each other, right? And similarly, like what we have to do in future is like these domains need to communicate with each other. The AI in these domains cannot operate in silo. I genuinely don't think that at an industry scale we have figured out how that inter-domain communication will take place, right? Even if AI is the future, like AI is the new digital employees have to talk to each other, right? CFO's office talk to CMO's office and so on and so forth, right? Inter-domain communication is important. And similarly, like inter-domain AI communication is important. That's my perspective. I don't have an answer on the how fully yet, because how we are still unfolding. But until that we establish that communication, AI domains will remain in their silos.
Front foot forward, quickest are the ones who set up the standards for this.
100%, right? And there would be like some early mover failures as well, right? Like some individuals, some companies will be early movers, right? They might fail on a few things, and the industry will learn from it. But like taking that leap of faith is quite important in establishing that domain communication. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, everybody.